Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Trade Talk. This is episode 19, and I'm your host, Niko. Thank you for checking back in to all the continued listeners of this show, and if you're new to this show, welcome, and thanks for checking it out. I have 3 books that I'm going to talk about today that I recently read over the past week. Hopefully my voice is a little bit better for you guys today. I know the last one was a little rough. I was just coming down with a cold at that time. I'm just getting off of the cold right now, actually. So without further ado, let's get to it. So first up, we got the Immortal Hulk. This is volume 5. I've talked about this book on the show before. I believe I talked about the last volume. This continues to be a very good series. It's a series that's getting a lot of praise from fans. I think it's consistently doing well in sales, and in terms of a Hulk book, it's probably got the most people talking in recent times that I can remember about a Hulk book. Hulk books normally don't do so well, I feel, at least during the time that I've been reading the past several years. And then basically, this is written by Al Ewing, art by Joe Bennett, and Ryan Bodenheim, I think, did the last issue in this, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just double checking. Yeah, him, and he did some parts of issue 21, actually the first one, and then German Garcia did parts of issues, basically drew 25, yeah. So Joe Bennett did 22 to 25, Ryan Bodenheim did 21, German Garcia drew 25. This collects 21 to 25. Retails at about $15.99 US price. This continued to be good. This was good. I would say, though, this is probably one of the weaker volumes I've read so far, only because 4 of the 5 issues were dedicated to basically the wrapping up the story that was set up previous to this with General Fordian, which was I guess the most recent army guy that used to be basically what's his name, Betty's father, the guy who's the Red Hulk, that I'm basically General Ross. Yeah, sorry, I was blanking on his name there for a moment. He kind of looked up to General Ross and was I guess worked under him at some point in the past, and he's the guy that's gone a little over the edge trying to basically take down the Hulk, as these army guys normally do, and just like General Ross did as well. And in this volume, he actually ends up fusing with the Abomination, Husk, basically whatever the Husk was, the leftover of the Abomination from the previous arc. He I don't know, melded with it or something in this. So that part was pretty freaky. It was really weird because his head, General Fordian's head, was basically in the middle of this big claw-like hand. So basically these claws wrap around his head and come off from the sides, and his head's basically just in the middle. So he's a talking head in the middle of a weird Hulk-like body, but then the head is almost an extra body part in the middle of a palm, but then as well with the claws coming out protruding from the side. So it's really strange looking and really hard to describe. But that's what I mean. It's a cool visual, and then all the different types of Hulks come together in this to help out to take down General Fordian. He goes a little over the edge in this. He ends up because now he's part of this thing, he ends up spitting acid at his enemies, but then he becomes uncontrollable, and he ends up spraying acid at some of his men of the army that are trying to assist him, and basically this next woman, second in charge, says that he's out of control, and she's you're gonna have to step down, don't listen to this man anymore, I'm in charge now to basically the rest of the army guys. So then he kind of goes ballistic because he's kind of no, I've lost my chain of now the chain of command is different, and he's looked at as a monster because he's accidentally spitting this acid all over the place. And then, like, just like, you know, General Ross kind of flew too close to the sun, like trying to take down the Hulk, turned himself into a fucking Hulk. And they comment on that in this, and how he commented to General Ross at the time about it. And he basically told him, like, I'm stepping in now, like, as he's, like, in prison, like. And yeah, but then he basically just fell to prey to the same shit, right? Like, these guys just want to take down the Hulk so bad that he like morphed with this like husk of the Abomination just to take him down, but then he became like a monster and looked at as one himself, right? And then like the different forms of the Bruce Banner basically start working together in this, like the Joe Fixit, like Hulk personality, and like you know, just the regular Hulk, and then as well as the Devil Hulk essentially at the end there ends up taking out General Fordian, right? And at one point he like spits acid in the Hulk's face, and like his skull starts showing, like, so, and then his speech starts getting all like messed up, and he's like basically wiping like the skin like right off of him, like he just rips the skin that's like the acid is affected and eaten away at, and like throws it at somebody, and then like he ends up like, you know, like saying like Hulk smash, was like Hulk smash, like it's just like faces like dissolving and shit. So like that whole scene was kind of horrific, and the visuals were awesome. Joe Bennett did a great job, and like this is like the real interesting horror aspect of this Hulk title, kind of full force in this arc. So you know, even as I'm describing it, I'm like, did I say this was one of the weaker ones? And I'll get to it in a minute. And that's just to say that all of the other volumes have been fantastic, like this so far. And this was also great. But there is one thing I didn't dig on, and that's the last issue of this, issue 25. It's some sort of weird fucking like, you know, I guess I can appreciate it because he was showing a different sort of craft and like approach to his storytelling, Al Ewing, in this last issue, but he's basically telling like a weird story that's like from the dawn of time almost, and about like the World Breaker, I guess, which is essentially like the Hulk, but like majority of the issue, it isn't even really touching on the Hulk. You're just seeing like weird shapes in space forming, and it's just like this like weird like inner monologue of or like, I don't know, there's like a narrator telling like basically how this came to fruition. And so like we're not even following a character majority of the issue, so it's really strange. Like it just, you get the 4 issues of this like horrific kind of like that's why I said like these Hulk scenes and taking down the bad guy, and you know, it just felt like more so like this comic has been so far, and that we were it was leading somewhere. But then you get this offbeat, weird, singular last issue, which then at the end after that, as like an epilogue, it's off like it basically introduces you to the leader, who I don't think we've seen as of yet in this current series, which is interesting because of course he's a big part of the Hulk's history as well. So I'm looking forward to that. It just this one issue just felt weird, and I'm trusting Al Ewing as a storyteller to kind of yeah, see, it says, I was just looking at the back here, it says, then billions of years in the future, the 9th cosmos cowers before the breaker of worlds. It's almost as like they're trying to, see, I thought it was the past, but I guess it was in the future, and maybe they're trying to say like that's how much of a like a threat or a presence that the Hulk is, to the point like he's, you know what I mean, like he's still fucking shit up years later in the future, like he's just like this unstoppable force. So like if it kind of helps build the mythos of this character, or what Al Ewing is basically trying to say about, you know, this demon or whatever like the Hulk is, like this power source that he's been kind of trying to describe throughout his whole run, which has been interesting. Okay, I get it, I'm on board for that. It's just, you know, at the end of this volume, after the arc we just kind of read, it just kind of sat with me there at the end, and I was just like, I'm like, this was kind of a weak kind of note to go out on. It's just not what I was looking forward to like it was expected. But in a way, yeah, it was a little different and interesting, I guess. But that was my only complaint about this volume in particular. Otherwise, great show all around. The story is building, and it's still really interesting, and I'm looking forward to the next volume. I mean, this is one of those series that I regret maybe not picking up in issues initially, but at the same time, it's like I burned through these really fast, so I don't know how much, like, reading in issues may have been too much of a slow burn for me to read it monthly. But yeah, I really liked this. I thought this was good, and I'm looking forward to the next volume, like I said. Immortal Hulk. If you guys aren't reading this, you definitely need to. They actually just came out with a hardcover, which collects the first 10 issues. So if you're not a fan of these and you like the nicer collected, like, you know, omnibuses or hardcover, oversized hardcover editions, that collects the first 2 trades, and I'm sure the second one will be coming out soon because, like, we're already at about 25 issues collected through paperbacks, right? So that's the only thing that kind of sucks about that hardcover. It only collects the first 10, which is a nice primer, but I think you get to the real meat of this story within the last, like, couple of trades leading into this, so... All right, so next up we got Naomi Season 1 hardcover. This is written by Brian Michael Bendis, art by Jamal Campbell. Sorry, it's also co-written by David F. Walker, I should mention. David F. Walker, who's written a bunch of other things over at... he wrote some things at Marvel, most notably, at least to me. I think he wrote the Power Man and Iron Fist series, which I really, really loved. You know, I guess it's a couple years old now, but he's a friend of Brian Bendis's, and I guess teaches with him as well, like a writing class. Yeah, art by Jamal Campbell. This was fun. I liked this. It's more of like this is part of like his line of comics, like. What's it called? Wonder Comics, I guess it's called. This is like his line of all ages books that he's doing with through DC Comics. Like, this is basically one of his imprints, along with like the Wonder Twins and Young Justice and Dial H for Hero. And this, Naomi. And Naomi first started appearing in his Superman stuff in Action Comics, and lately I think she's been crossing over into the other books within the Wonder Comics line. You know, I think she showed up in Young Justice recently, maybe. There is going to be a crossover anyways, and they came out with this first 6-issue arc, which they basically are saying like Season 1, because now all comics are kind of taking the approach, a lot of them now, similar to like TV shows. Like, they'll do seasons if they can't, you know, they know that they can't hold down the same creative team or the same artist, or they got other multiple projects going on. They'll kind of put out an arc and then maybe revisit it in a year. It's almost like more of a creator-owned approach, but coming through like one of the big 2 companies. So they've been doing this slowly on some different titles lately. You know, I guess more so to garner interest, to see if it, you know, if it takes off, if it's a big hit, then, you know, we'll do another arc somewhere down the line, maybe for the things they aren't ready to commit to. And, you know, this being a newly established character, coming through an all ages imprint, I'm sure that maybe they felt that was, the case, right? And anyways, but apparently the, Wonder Comics imprint by Bendis has been doing quite well. I know Dial H for Hero and Wonder Twins were both originally, I think, publicized as being 6-issue series, and now they're 12-issue series. So that's cool. And Naomi was a big hit from what I've been hearing, and this was good. The hardcover retailed at $19.99 US for 6 issues. You know, it's a little pricier. I believe the paperback will be out soon, though, so you might be better off just waiting for that. I read and enjoyed this, but I would say that this is one of those things where I'm probably not going to rush out and buy the second hardcover as soon as it comes out. Like, I might try to get it cheaper, or even downgrade to the paperback if I see that on the real cheap side, and get rid of this hardcover. I liked it, but just not enough to, you know, get at a full price the next time it comes around, if that makes any sense. You know, I'm not rushing to read this like I was the new volume of Immortal Hulk. And while I liked it, It is definitely lighter in tone, which and simple. Pretty basic. It's your pretty basic superhero young girl origin kind of story. Essentially, there's this girl Naomi that had seen this occurrence of Superman in her town where like nothing out of the ordinary ever happens. Like she got in the middle of this fight that went down that actually you first saw within the, I guess, pages of Action Comics or the Superman special that Bendis had set up, basically launching into his run. Like maybe it was Action Comics 1000 actually. And that basically was like a soft setup for this character Naomi, and then Naomi, I guess from there, was like infatuated with Superman and with superheroes, and always has been, and kind of went on and on about it. And then through talking to people in her town, she found out something about the fact like the local mechanic knew that she was like the day she was born, essentially, and that was the last time a superhero sighting was made. And he kind of hinted at that, and she kind of, tried to delve further and further into this mystery of like how this guy knew this, and like what does he know about her, and like what did he mean by that, and then it turns out like he's like a Thanagarian guard, and her father is somebody from Ran, like basically where what's his name? Not Captain Adam. Adam Strange is from. He's from the planet Ran, and it turns out that these two guys landed on Earth. Well, I guess the Thanagarian landed on Earth during the Ran-Thanagar War, which is like a well-known DC kind of like past event. And during that time, her father, I guess, went to Earth to basically find this guy. But both of them, during their time on Earth, found to like living on Earth. And then he fell in love with like an Earth girl, which is Naomi's mother. And ever since then, they've been trying to kind of keep this secret from her and like under wraps. And like their transmissions never kind of came back afterwards. And like they forgot about these two different soldiers, and they just continued living on Earth this whole time. And then it turns out that Naomi is not even actually their daughter. She is their. There was, I guess, other people that came, the only people, I guess, maybe that came to Earth following them being there. He ended up shooting one of them because he thought they were trouble, and they left a baby there on Earth, and the baby, it turns out, was Naomi. So then her father, I guess the guy from Ran, ended up taking care of her and raising her with the Earth woman that he had fallen in love with. So, and Thanagarian just kind of went about and did his thing, and they agreed not to, even though they were enemies prior to this. At least their planet, their people were sworn enemies. So. But they didn't really know each other, and since they were both kind of living out their lives at this point, and no one was really bothering them, they kind of just gave up on that whole bit, and went about, did their own thing. So, and then you find out that she has powers, and then she basically, there was like some stuff left for her in the spaceship that these people had come down to Earth in, similar to Superman with his cape, but it was a box that like there was like all these memories, and like just like the hollow projection of like Superman's father or something that he left her parents left her a bunch of stuff, and for her to know of her powers and of their people. So then she kind of learns about all that, and then by the end of it, something happens where, I guess because she finally activated her powers, somebody traced that back to her on Earth and went to attack her, and then along with her friends and family, she ends up taking them down, and then at the end it kind of is with her shooting off into the air, being happy and free, and kind of now that she knows like the real truth about herself and this and that, you know what I mean? Like, it's your basic, in a way, it was your basic cookie cut. Like, I've read books like this before, and Bendis has even done this before with younger characters, and this book is needed, though. Like, this is a book about a young black girl and with powers, and it's a great, like I said, Bendis has done it with the Iron Man. Ironheart character he did. Same with Miles. Like, he's done other young black characters, and and did like young characters, and it's good to have a young imprint and a new character to kind of mix it up with all the old characters. And if you're going to pick somebody to do that, Bendis is the right guy. So I think that it was a smart move for them to do this with the imprint. The Jamal Campbell art is fantastic, very clean line and very vibrant, and he draws the heck out of everything. There's a great scenes, like there's a great fight scenes, double page spreads, dynamic kind of looking moments. This guy does it all. He did like kind of touching scenes, great character moments and expressions. Just some of the best work I've seen from Jamal Campbell before, as I've seen him do a bunch of things for DC in the past. He's kind of leveled up this past year on a couple different things I've seen him work on, including this other book, The Wrong Earth, which I believe I actually talked about on this show, if I'm not mistaken, so in past episodes. So yeah, the art was probably the best part about this, and the story is not bad either. It's just, it's definitely enjoyable, and if any of that sounds good to you, then something that you would dig on, then yeah, definitely check this out. It's not bad in any means. It's just something that I've seen done before, just as well, and because of like the kind of story and tone that they're going for, it's something that I'll definitely end up checking out more of, but I won't be rushing to, if that makes any sense. With everything that I read, there's definitely certain things I'll gravitate more so than others, so this being one of those things. And then last off, we got Middlewest. This is book 2. This is by Image Comics, written by Scotty Young, art by Jorge Corona. I read the first volume of this. I actually started reading this in issues, and I'm like, you know what, this might be read better in a chunk. So after the first couple of issues, I dropped off of this, picked up the first volume, read the whole thing, enjoyed it, but wasn't sure on it. Like I wasn't like convinced. Like I was like, yeah, I'm gonna pick up the whole series. Like I wasn't totally on board. I was like, it was a good, interesting start, and I'm signing up for more. But with this second volume, I was like, yeah, I'm in. I'm totally in now. This second volume was much better than the first. I think it was just kind of a slow start and setup for me. And this is like a personal book, I think, for Scotty Young. I've heard interviews with him talk about it, and like you can tell, like there's a lot of depiction of father-son relationships in this, as well as anger and learning to deal with anger, and learning like how, like that whole thing where like your son may not look up to you at a certain point in his life and not understand maybe the way you are, the choices you've made, or understand where that anger comes from. And it's one of those things you're like, oh, if I have a kid, I'm never going to be like my father. And I guess in this volume, that's never more apparent, because you see that his father had struggled with his own father, which he also kind of came across in this, his son. Because basically this story is about those themes, and it's about his son kind of going across the Midwest. Well, but it's a fantastical kind of Midwest thing, and I guess Scotty Young's from the Midwest, so that's why it's called Middlewest, because it's like this whole like fantasy kind of take on somebody going across the Midwest, like on a journey, and trying to, like, as a kid, to find himself while he's actually trying to escape the clutches of his father, who, when he gets real angry, I guess metaphorically in a sense, but in the book it actually is a thing. Like he like from inside of him, he turns into this crazy, like, angry tornado, like, that just destroys things around, everything in the path around him, and I guess he lets off on him in the first story arc, and then he kind of was like, you know, like, fuck you, I'm leaving, I'm going off on my own, I don't need you, kind of shit, and then hits the road. And then from there, the story has been about him encountering different things in this world, this fantasy kind of world where magic exists, and you know, just weird different characters, and it feels like other old fantasy stuff that like the things like that may seem similar in tone and stuff, like, like Never Ending Story, something like that, kind of, where it's like the parallels between the real world and the fantasy world and what they're trying to say about these characters are very kind of close, you know what I mean? So, like, and the character learns about himself as he kind of makes his way through this fantastical world. So it's interesting, and I know other people had tried to compare it to like the worlds of Miyazaki and things like that. I don't know if I'd so much as say that, but if you like that kind of stuff, I think you definitely like this. Like I just think it's an interesting blend of all those kinds of things. And if you're not sold from reading the first volume, then like I was, definitely check out the second volume, because this second volume, it just kind of, the layers that kind of are put upon the previous story, and just like kind of where our character goes in this, and like the lessons he learns, and like the visuals continue to be great, and just some really good dialogue and storytelling. It's just really, really good. Like I can't say enough good things about this second volume. I ended up flying through this, but it was from like pure enjoyment throughout the whole thing. And he's got like a companion that's like a talking fox, because of course he does in this type of story, you know what I mean? Like he meets his grandfather, who turns out that his grandfather and his father are not so different, and then you kind of get some flashback moments of that, and he kind of opposes the grandfather too, while at first it seems like he was like a point of refuge for him, that he would be able to stay with him, and then he's just like, I'm nothing like my dad, and I love you, Grandpa, and and then he kind of flashed back to a moment where like they were at a funeral, I guess, of his father's mother, his grandfather's wife, who had passed away, and he came up to the son and tried to like give him something, and like he was like, get away from my son, you know what I mean? This is the father, and then in that moment it seemed like the father was the bad person, because he's kind of like, my father's a piece of shit, like don't listen to him, like you have no grandfather type of thing. And it just felt like very real, like, and like I guess a lot of these things are probably coming from a real place, and it just felt like that whole family turmoil and stuff, like things like that have happened in people's lives before, and they can definitely relate to that kind of stuff. But then in the backdrop, you got all these weird fantastical things going on, and then by the end of this, he basically gets abducted and basically put onto this by these people that force kids to work for them on farms, like, so, you know what I mean? Like, so it's almost like, almost Pinocchio, like they're just abducting kids and making them like work for them, and but it's not like in a stage show or a circus or whatever the fuck that was in Pinocchio, but this is like, they fly them away on like this plane that they have, and then they have like a certain territory where they're basically making these kids mine these like weird minerals in this field, which are like they're like magic based or something like that. So that's what I mean. So it's really out there as well. Like I know me probably trying to describe some of this stuff, unless like you're really into this kind of genre, like fantasy genre and stuff, you're like, what the fuck is he talking about? But that's what I mean. Like it rides a fine line of mixing real life themes with fantastical themes, and I'm not huge on fantasy, but if it's presented in a way like this, where you definitely have some grounded themes along with it, I'm definitely more so on board. So, it seems like it's just one of those really good coming of age kind of stories that's building up, and with this second volume, I'm totally in. This collected issues 7 to 12 of the series, and it's a $16.99 U.S. retail trade through Image Comics. Definitely try it out. Like I said, if you've yet to check this out, even if you can find some of the first few issues on the cheap, but for me, it took me more than just the first volume to be totally on board. You might be, it might just be me. It might be on board. The first volume gave me enough to kind of check out the second one. Like I was definitely like, okay, this is good, but I just needed a little bit more, and this second volume totally delivered with that. This was great, and Scotty Young, if he was, I mean, he's already a talented enough cartoonist, but the fact that now he's writing books, and his writing has been also equally bringing me quite a lot of joy through reading some of the things he's done over the past few years. He's just doing an outstanding job. So, Middlewest, definitely check it out. Okay, guys, that's it for me today. I will see you next week, where I talk about a few more different things I've read by that point. All right, take care.